Hello everyone, welcome back to another interesting session of the Analyst. Today we are going to comprehensively discuss 7 articles under 2 sections. These articles have been sourced from the Indian Express and the Hindu. In section A, we will analyze 2 articles in depth. First article deals with the steel industry in India, its status, data on its production, various challenges that this sector faces, different initiatives undertaken and the way forward on the same. Second article is about the occurrence of forest fires in India, the definition and the areas prone to it, various government efforts to contain it and the measures that can be adopted in the future. Next, in section B, which is the simplified section, we will take another 5 articles along with the value addition part. This will help you in your upcoming prelims. So stay tuned. So the first article of the day is about the India's steel industry. We have seen tremendous growth this sector has achieved over the years in India's context, replacing Japan in the year 2018 to become the second largest producer of steel across the world, right after China. Now, in the immediate context of Donald Trump imposing various kind of import tariffs on steel imports in its own territory across the world on various countries, we will see what kind of impact it can have on India's steel sector and what are its concerns and how can we address those. So to start this discussion, first of all, we need to know what is the present status of the steel sector and so to say the industry. Just to tell you and give you an idea on this, India, like I said, it's the second largest crude steel producer and it surpassed Japan in 2018. In financial year 2024, last year and the ongoing year, crude steel production, remember the keyword crude steel production, it stood at around 143.6 million tons, whereas the finished steel, it stood at around 138.5 million tons. Now, if we talk of exports and imports, then of finished steel, it stood at around 7.5 million tons and imports, it is around 8.32 million tons. So despite having despite being the second largest producer of steel, India still depends on its import. There are reasons for it and we will deal with each of them as we go ahead. For one particular data and statistics, you need to know that per capita consumption of steel in India is at around 86.7 kgs per capita. That is around 87 kgs. So now if you want to have an idea about the location of some of the steel industries, because this could help you in your prelims also, you can see that one steel plant we have in Bhadravati, one in Salem, then another Rourkela, Bhilai, Chandrapur, then we have Delhi Sale Corporate Office, Bokaro, Durgapur in West Bengal, again, and some of these are also under Tata Steel. So you can have a look on this. Now moving ahead, we need to have some data on the production, finished steel production, the consumption on India scale and its comparison with different countries. And let's see where India production takes place in terms of its various states. So first of all, crude steel production in the financial year 2024, as you can see, Odisha remains the largest producer. Second is Jharkhand and third is Chhattisgarh. So you can remember these top 3 states in India producing steel. The production, the data and statistically it is around 26 million tons if we talk about Odisha's production, just to give you and have an idea about what sort of degree it varies in production when it comes to different states. Second is Jharkhand, it is at 20 million tons and Chhattisgarh, it is at 18 million tons. There are other states also, but for your information and for your knowledge, I think top 3 would suffice. Now, when we are coming and talking about production and consumption, we are taking the case of April to June and we are comparing year to year, 2021 to 22 with 22, 23 and again the further years. We can see in case of production, in case of finished steel production and crude steel production, both of these which are indicated by the blue color and the red color, both of these are increasing over the years. There has never been a decline. Similarly, finished steel consumption also, consumption is different from the production, remember, it is also, you would see that it has also consistently increased from this point to this point. So these have always been increasing. This shows the demand and consumption and the potential this sector holds on India's scale, domestically as well as internationally in the context of its exports. Now, in addition to this, we will also talk about the robust growth plan that India holds. So, in 2017, India came out and rolled out its national steel policy, which talked about doubling the production of steel by the year 2030 and 31. In that, we are now going to see the difference and the production and of course the consumption that took place in comparison of 2 years, right from 2022 to 2023. So here, in case of production, we will see that the production has increased. This is in 2022. This dark blue color is in 2023. In case of import, has also increased. In exports, though it has decreased, but again after years, it's going to increase as the demands for infrastructure and other needs for steel gets enhanced. Now consumption, we also witnessed the increase as 2022 to 2023. Now, if we compare India with at the world level with different countries, you would see that China is the largest producer with about 51% share of the production at the world scale, which is one of the largest producer. Second is India. The only point it stands at 6%, though the rank it's second, but the difference is huge if you compare it with China's production levels. And finished steel product, if we compare it by the market share, again, China has 48.6% of market share. India, on the other hand, has about 5 to 6%. All right. So you can note here 5 to 6%. This was a little bit of comparison. Now coming to potential of steel sector in India. This is now India becoming second largest producer of steel. Not to say that it has fulfilled its potential. It still retains large of its potential unfulfilled, untapped. So what are the reasons, what are the causes that gives us the indication that there is large production, there is large potential of increasing the production? So first of all, India has 5th highest reserves of iron ore, which is the primary raw material for steel making or smelting of iron that leads to steel production. So second is manpower. The Indian manpower and the labor is competitive. It works at the lower cost. It also works with probably lower productivity, but the number is large. Also, Economic Survey 2018-19 specifically pointed out that for India, it is in comparative advantage that India chooses to work or establish industries in labor-intensive sectors. One of those sectors is manufacturing, especially in steel sector. Now, construction and real estate sectors has an unending demand for building, rebuilding, construction and of course infrastructure. There we need of course our high-grade steel. Not just housing, building, infrastructure at public level, on roads, on bridges, everything requires the critical elements of steel. So this is required again in automobile industry. What is the primary metal or element that we need, or even the alloys? We do need steel. All right. So this is this tells us about the potential of, because India also has one of the largest automobile industry. Having said that, there is a robust demand. This we can gauge by that the production is going to increase. Finished steel consumption also, it's going to increase to 230 million tons by 2030-31 as per 2017 steel policy. And presently it is around 90 to 100 million tons. Second, increasing investment. We have seen that investments have come in India from across the world, from different countries, as in the form of FDI. If we talk about it, is in terms of around more than 17 billion US dollars from 2000 to 2017. Or probably around 2020. So this kind of investment we have seen. Then there is a case of policy support. Like I have said, there is a policy, there are different initiatives which have been taken by Government of India to support the potential and to develop this steel industry in India. Comparative advantage, when we have low labor cost, when we have low power cost, greater efficiency, we would see that Indian steel being competitive at global scale, at global market. So this is the potential. Now coming to challenges, having discussed the potential, not to say that we do not have challenges. We do have certain challenges, starting from the critical energy raw material that we need for producing iron is the coal. India's steel industry, or at the global scale, largely depends on metallurgical coal. This is a high-grade coal which produces more energy as compared to low-grade coal. Now in India, presence of low-grade coals is present. There are higher reserves of that. Metallurgical coal is inadequate. So we depend on imports. When we are importing anything for energy and just to produce any material, it would increase the cost of production. Second challenge is that it is capital intensive. It requires large investment. We depend on foreign direct investment, and it comes with certain conditions. It could mean that higher production costs, and that would destroy the local and domestic market as well. Second is power supply problems. The crucial supply of power is required for the production, but our power supply is intermittent. Sometimes if we are thinking about integrating the renewable energy, that is also not fully integrated. The grid has not been established so far. Then there is per capita labor productivity, which in India is about 90 to 100 tons. That means if this labor productivity is low as compared to global countries like China, US, Japan, South Korea, that means it would mean more cost for the domestic steel in the domestic market as well as in the international market. Our products will become costlier and they would not find sellers. Then poor logistics. If we compare some of these steel plants in China, in Japan, South Korea, you would see their locations at the coastal places, which reduces the transportation cost, which reduces the complexity of logistics, which is not the case in India. In India, these steel plants, like I said, Salem steel plant or other steel plants are mostly inland. That also requires complications and procedures related to its transportation to its export destinations. Now, this sector and steel manufacturing production also contributes to 9% of the country's total greenhouse gases emissions. With India's target of doubling this production to around 3 million tons by 2030, this share of greenhouse emissions tend to increase, and that may conflict with net zero commitments that India has committed. The last and one of the several challenges that India faces is low potential utilization. Generally, the steel plants that have been developed are only used to the capacity of its 80% establishment. It never increases beyond that, rarely increase because of general strikes or maybe administration inefficiencies or sometimes due to other power complications also. So these are more or less the challenges. Now we can see or discuss some of the government initiatives also for this sector. Starting with National Steel Policy that I have already discussed. The target of 300 million tons by 2030-31, including both the demand as well as supply sectors. 2019, we also came out with steel scrap recycling policy so that our imports decreased and we can recycle the same scrap material, and it could also contribute to circulating economy and reduce the charges and the cost we pay for importing steel from outside. Then we have inclusion of specialty steel in PLI scheme. PLI scheme is production linked incentive scheme. Incentives are given to produce this high grade steel, specialty steel, which is required in extensive and modern equipments and advanced segments and sectors of the economy. Now PLI scheme is in short, this will also align with the PM. There is scheme of Make in India. That scheme is also in line or aligns with this PLI scheme. It's going to contribute. Next, there is stage of green steel making, whereby green steel means we are trying to decrease the greenhouse emissions which takes place during the production stage. That means we are working on decarbonization. For that, we have also launched National Mission for Green Hydrogen production. We are coming with the production of green hydrogen, and which is further used to produce steel manufacturing. So, and apart from it, we are also using best available technologies across various stages in the steel production, not just at steel plants. Of course, we need advanced state-of-the-art technologies, but we are dependent on investments as well as transfer of technology. We are also working on research and development aspect in India's territory for the same purpose. Now there are safety guidelines also which have been rolled out by the government in keeping in line with the ILO guidelines, and that would cater to all the departments and sections within the entire supply chain of industry, steel industry per se. Then 100% FDI through automatic route has been allowed by the government, and we have seen around 17.5 billion US dollars have come in from 2000 to 2024. So this is the exact data you can note in case of 100% FDI. Now, just to tell you that how green hydrogen is being used in the production of green steel, where we of course use iron, and steel manufacture takes place where hydrogen is used as iron as energy source in place of coal. So we replace coal by green hydrogen, and that gives us steel, basically the green steel. That is what is known as green steel, or removing or decreasing the carbonization. Then measures that we can still take and adopt to improve that these concerns, whatever are there, they are addressed. First of all, we have to ensure that there is a level playing field for domestic industries, because of course there are huge incentives given to manufacturers in countries like China, Japan, South Korea. At least we have to equalize them to the domestic manufacturers, so they can at least come up at the level and they could fight the competition that exists at the global scale. Then we have to, and those incentives could be in terms of probably tax concessions or removing the tariffs. Then second is low carbon energy sources, like the green hydrogen. We can use other sources of renewable energy also. It could be wind energy, it could be solar energy, but we have to make sure that it is not intermittent, it is regular and consistent in supply, even during nights. We can again take towards coal gasification, which is much greener if you compare with the direct and raw coal, or even the electricity. Then we have to enhance carbon efficiency. That means we have to ensure whatever carbon is going on, it is leading to more production as compared to the past production. As in, if let's say if the same amount of carbon is right now producing 10 million tons, it should produce more than 10 or even anything beyond 10. That would mean the increment and improvement and increasing the carbon efficiency. So it could mean anything more than great if let's say the present level is at 10 million tons. Second, the fourth, we can also use artificial intelligence in the form of various simulation. We can put in different sorts of research and development techniques at each stage of the steel production to see and reduce the wastage, to employ robots also in the stages where manual labor could be replaced. Again, replacing manual labor would not mean loss of jobs. We'll have to skill and upgrade so that the different efficiencies improved. If the labor is skilled, of course they would get newer jobs in the improved sections of production in the case of steel sector. So this mechanism is employed by the European countries. Government of India has to ensure that proper dialogue takes place in terms of steel manufacturing exports and imports, so that in these developing countries, apart from the small developing countries and least developed countries, are also given proper rights and fair environment to develop. So this we can take up at the diplomatic level. So this was about the steel sector in India. Now is the time for prelims question. Please look at it and solve it for yourself. Then there is time for prelims for mains PYQs. Please look at it and try to write down these answers. These have been asked in mains already. Try to answer in your answer sheet. Second article is on the forest fires. Recently we saw California forest fires, and this issue brought the larger context and larger theme of forest fires that also we see in context of India to the spotlight. Now that we are seeing that April is about to approach, so this cause could again be risen, and we have to ensure that proper guidelines and proper measures are taken so that this issue is taken care of. Now starting with how do we define forest fires? Because first of all, if there is any problem, we need to properly and clearly demarcate it before we can handle and address it. So it could be defined any wildfire or bushfire. It cannot be any artificially or otherwise fire. It has to be uncontrolled or non-prescribed combustion. Combustion as in burning of trees or leaves or these vegetation. And it has to be in a natural setting. So these keywords, you have to remember these keywords. It has to be a natural setting. That could be a grassland, it could be a forest, it could be any tundra-based situation or your environment or biodiversity. It could be in brushland as well. So to make it easier, it could be on any land, forest, grasslands, or but if let's say if we have to talk about its type, if we have to demarcate it, we generally categorize into three types: ground, surface and crown. Let's say there are trees, huge trees with canopy, and there are some vegetation here. So it would have some decayed matter, decomposed material, or some leaves dying down. So if the fire starts here and probably, let's say, remains here till then, till that situation, it will be called as ground fire. But when it starts catching up with the surface leaves or here, it would be termed as surface fire. When it catches up till the canopy or the larger canopy which gives habitat to different wildlife and animals, it would be termed as crown fire. So this was regarding different types of forest fires. Now coming back to it, we see that as per the Forest Survey of India, around 11% or specifically 10.66% of forest cover is prone to extremely to very high prone zones towards forest fires. And in particularly, some of the states are extremely prone. Some of them are Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and others, some from the northern east, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, and also Uttarakhand. You can see here that this is western Himalayas, this is northeast area, then this is central India, this is also prone, especially Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and here Western Ghat also, and some of the portions in Eastern Ghat. So these are 5 primary areas which you can categorize under forest fire prone zones in India. Alright, now you can see this is just a simple demarcation that if you see fire suppressed forest would look like at the end something like this. So this would destroy the ecosystem, the vegetation, the biodiversity, the natural system, the carrying capacity of the region, whereas if the forest is ecologically managed, you would see something like this. Not of a much different, but probably some dynamic changes that keeps on occurring on its natural speed. Now, there could be some causes of it. They could be primarily divided under 2 categories, natural and human-made or man-made, or also known as anthropogenic causes. So this could be your 2 types of causes or reasons behind forest fire. Under natural fires, we see that sometimes fuel is available. How that could be available? There could be moisture level. If this moisture level goes down, the leaves and the vegetation becomes drier. So it becomes more vulnerable and susceptible to heat, the temperatures, and of course the fires. Then it could be the chemical makeup or the chemical composition of the trees, plants, such as some resins and oils which are excreted from these trees are prone to forest fires. For example, pine trees. If you would see wherever there are pine trees, there is more susceptibility of forest fires to take place. Of course, the density would vary. If there are larger trees, larger growth of under vegetation, it would generate, and if given the condition that it has become dried, it would lead to larger forest fires. It will also lead to increase in the speed of the forest fire spread. Then the second cause is wind velocity. Wind, what does wind do? It of course lead to spread. One might ask that why not wind causes the probably eliminates those kind of fires? Because it brings oxygen, which is crucial for fire to continue. Then it could be lightning also. Sometimes lightning strike these forests, these areas, and it could generate forest fires. Then volcanic lava, because it leads to magma eruption or lava eruption that is extremely high in temperature. It could generate heat and eventually forest fire. But generally in India, this is not the case. And now coming to anthropogenic cases, starting with there could be unattended campfires. They could be negligibly unattended cigarette also left by people, unconcerned, sometimes ignorant, sometimes unaware. And second cause could be intentional fires or arson. Arson, or it could be also some activities undertaken by these armed forces to take care of security concerns. Now, if intentional fires could also mean that local people could also generate fire for getting some warmth or to remove or to clean the field, per se. Third could be climate change, human-led climate change, and it could increase the temperature, the heat in the area, and if let's say trees are removed, which are carbon sinks. So when those trees are removed, carbon is getting, of course, eliminated. Carbon is released into the atmosphere, which is increasing the temperatures and leading to climate change. Then shifting cultivation. This is generally practiced by some of the communities that grow plants and trees in an area or even the agriculture crop, and once they are done, once the crop is harvested, they burn and they shift to another area. The burning sometimes also leads to forest fires. So these some of these could be natural as well as anthropogenic causes. Now, talking about impact. After the causes, we need to know what could be its impact. Not only negative, but there are positive impacts of forest fire also. So starting with the positive itself, we have seen that it leads to nutrient cycling. How? Because trees, vegetation, leaves, fodder, all is degraded and burned down to ashes. This could act as substitute to the soil and could increase its fertility. So helping in nutrients recycling or cycling of the soils. Then plant germination. Some of these plants like lodgepoles or jack pines, you would see that these have seeds which are enclosed in nature. So there is a circling and there is a proper sheath outside it, and this requires certain amount of heat which is excessive in nature for these seeds to come out and further go towards germination. And this you get by forest fires in case of these plants. So yes, this forest fire is acting positively for these kind of species. Then of course it clears the forest floor. By clearing the forest floor, it avails the space, it avails the water to the limited number of species, the competition gets reduced. It also avails sunlight in a way. So plants can grow, the remaining plants can grow better, and it would of course lead to better carrying capacity of the region. Fourth point is, some of these animals depends on fire for their food and some of them also depends for their habitat. There is one particular species of butterfly, which is your Garner blue butterfly. Remember the name? Now this is a caterpillar. At its caterpillar stage, it needs certain kind of plant. So that particular plant only grows when there is cleared out vegetation after the forest fire. So yes, we do need forest fires to ensure the growth and vegetation of these kind of species as well. And they also provide habitats by generating hollows in certain trees which could be used as shelter by some of these species. So these are largely 4 positive impacts. Now coming to negative impacts also, which are largely in excess to the positive impact. What happens is, all of this leads to positive impact, but you have to remember that whenever forest fire takes place, there are more chances that most of the vegetation will be burned out. So it of course reduces forest cover and it degenerates into hardy trees. So let's say if there is your evergreen forest, it would go and become your deciduous. From deciduous, it would grow on and become grasslands and further degrade into deserts. All right. So there is degradation of vegetation, the type of vegetation. If continuous and consistent forest fire takes place in a region, it could also lead to devastating floods. How? It will reduce the holding with the removal of vegetation, with the removal of trees, with the removal of forests. It will lead to decreasing the holding capacity of soils. When the water occurs, soil will not uphold it and it would lead to submergence of downstream areas, these floods, and also as a result, it will erode the soil, which will reduce and have multiple consequences on not just on food security, but also the habitat of people, livelihood, their property and others as well. Then third case could be loss of livelihood. Like I said, there could be loss of livelihood for people who are dependent on forest produce coming through these forests, especially tribals, rural areas and communities that harness various types of products, including non-timber forest produce, sometimes fuel wood also. So they would suffer loss of livelihood. They would also see loss of habitat if some of these forest dwelling communities are there. Then it could lead to generation of dust, it could lead to generation of air pollution, and it eventually would lead to smog. Then climate change, like I said, removal of trees will lead to the availability of excess carbon dioxide, which was earlier subdued and absorbed by these plants. So in turn leading to enhanced temperatures and eventual climate change. Now initiatives that the government of India and various states has taken. So first of all, we have National Action Plan on Forest Fire, which has decisively taken forest fringe communities as an important factor and stakeholder along with forest department, so that holistically these forest fires would be taken care of right from its stage of preparedness to the response. Then there is also Forest Fire Prevention and Management Scheme. It is a central sponsored scheme. It provides fire equipments. It also provides to build or money and investments for building water structures. Apart from, it also generates monitoring systems, deploys sensors, and generates awareness among the communities. Then there is forest fire alerts. These modest sensors, these are specified sensors used by Forest Survey of India in Dehradun, and it leads to dissemination of various fire alerts to different states, also various communities and people via email or via message. Then there is FSI 1 Agni Geo portal. It also helps in monitoring and geolocation. Then important and crucial training of National Disaster Response Force is done. Their capacity building takes place so that they can respond in the preparation stage to the response stage. And this could be contained. These forest fires could be contained. Now you can see that among the measures also to mitigate forest fire, we have what we can do. Okay, apart from the initiatives that the government of India has taken, there are other measures that we can take, including expansion of forest cover. We can expand it whenever there is a decline of forest cover. These forest fires incidents increase, and when there is expansion of forest cover, there obvious decline in fire incident. This had been found in various surveys. So we need to increase afforestation, we need to take to afforestation, we need to increase our forest cover. Then we have to remove surface litter in form of dry leaves and other dry vegetation, which makes these forests prone to fires. It starts from the ground surface, but it has the ability to catch up with the surface fire and up till canopy fires. We have to establish watchtowers also, so that constant monitoring takes place and we are aware right at the first stage, so that to avoid the spread of forest fires. Then we can also take to education, environmental improvement. We can also take to generating awareness among the people, important stakeholders. We can employ the silviculture technology, which means surveying, planting seedlings, brushing, competing vegetation. We have to remove and control competing vegetation. We can take to root removal, control root, improving forest health. We have to sow seeds at the proper places so that it is within the carrying capacity. This basically silviculture ensures that forest growth takes place at a level where this is sustainable or avoids forest fires at large. Then there could be engineering and structural measures that we can take. We can deploy these structures at some point, but this is on our supply side. Morely, we have to be ensure of more efforts coming from community side so that they are aware, because they are the first actors whenever any disaster strikes. We have to actively involve these communities. Then fire extinguisher equipment and well-equipped personnel. Like I said, there has to be training of these forces. So they are well-equipped. They have a proper clear command of structure. The activities are coordinated and people know who are responsible for what, and proper this command of structure could be established and these incidents of forest fire could be contained. Then another remote sensing technologies. You can see there are various systems that we employ in this technology that could be terrestrial based, it could be aerial based, or it could be satellite based. It detects fires by flame or smoke. Then there are sensors that could sense visible radiation, infrared or multispectral as well. And of course, we have different methods too, but the use of crucial remote sensing technology is important. Now the time for the mains practice question. Examine the reasons for rising incidents of forest fires in India and steps that can be taken to contain them. Write this answer in 150 words. Moving on to the simplified sections of the day. The first article reads about India and 57 other countries have signed the inclusive and sustainable. There is a summit going on in Paris, and this is on sustainable use of artificial intelligence. So Prime Minister Modi has visited France for the same. Let's see what have been the outcomes of this summit and who all has participated. So in fact, this saw around 100 countries participation, but only And to be noted that 58 countries, including India, have signed the document. And those countries also include Brazil, France, Australia, which have signed a joint statement that talks, and the theme is about inclusive and sustainable artificial intelligence for people and the planet. And the AI, this summit is taking place in Paris. The statement, however, was particularly, you have to keep in mind, was not signed by two prominent countries. One was US and second was UK. And this is the third such summit taking place. There already have been two summits. First itself was conducted in and by UK. And for this third summit, India and France are co-chairing this particular summit. So this is the third such summit, like I said. The other first two took place first in UK and the second was in South Korea. This particular third summit calls for artificial intelligence to be human rights based. Human rights based means the particular human rights has to be valued, has to be put up when we are formulating these laws and regulations related to this technology. No any biases, maybe racial biases or other perceptions should be counted in. It has to be human-centric, solving human, social, economic and other problems. It has to be ethical, safe and secure. The considerations of other security, including cyber security, has to be taken care of while rolling out these technology and provisions. They have to be trustworthy, not at just the domestic and country level, but at the global level. So stressing the need and urgency to narrow the inequalities and assisting developing countries as well. Because first of all, developed countries have the capacity to develop and work on the research and development, while this is not the case with the developing countries. So we have to count in these developing countries as well and help them in generating and developing the environment and ecosystem necessary for artificial intelligence. So PM Modi, in its third summit that is happening in Paris, has particularly emphasized on 4 points. He has said AI for all. That means it has to be inclusive to ensure inclusivity, and it has to be ethical AI development. It has to be balanced regulation as well, and opportunities facilitativeness is too. So both has to be balanced. Then AI's role in digital public infrastructure, because it increases the accessibility and inclusivity of the people living in rural and remote areas. Then collaboration with the global south, including the least developed countries as well as the small island developing nations. Now, the second article, which reads about the South Sudan and in particular the Corruption Perception Index, which is a regular rollout by the Transparency International, which is located in Germany. So it has come out with its own index, which annually compiles, and it has found that 47 out of the 180 countries that it enrolled have degraded and got the lowest score since it has rolled out its new methodology in 2012. From that year onwards, this is the year or in 2024, these 47 countries have scored their lowest score so far. Global average remains at around 43. And around more than two-thirds of the countries have remained below the score of 50. So again, two by third countries have remained below 50. Apart from that, Denmark stays at the top and with its unchanged score of 90 points. At the second level, there is this country of Finland. So Denmark followed by Finland. At the last, South Sudan have come to the bottom of the index and it has replaced Somalia. Last year it was the Somalia that stood at the last rank. Now this has been replaced by South Sudan. United States has also witnessed degradation and it reduced its point by 4 points from 69 to 65, giving it the place 28th as compared to 24th, which it scored the last year. India has ranked also 96 out of 180 countries. But in the decrement in the scores, it has only decreased by 1 mark and dropping a score to 38. So in the last year, it was at a score of 37. Now it has gone down to 38. There are some Western countries also like France and Germany. They have also registered the decline in the scores and the respective ranks. Now coming back to Transparency International, this is an organization which was founded in 1993 and its headquarters is located in Germany, like I said, particularly in the city of Berlin. The objective is to combat corruption, specifically global corruption, promote transparency, accountability and integrity. This organization you can also use as an example in your ethics answers. Some of the institutions that are promoting and probably working, trying to contain corruption at all levels of government and society. Methodology, it works through advocacy, researches and publishing these indices. One of them is Corruption Perception Index itself that comes out annually. Now, the third article, which actually deals with Shankari Prasad case that we all are aware of, we are familiar with, and it led to culmination with the Keshwananda Bharti case that came out in 1973. So remember this case is very important. Why we are discussing? Because this case this year has achieved a coverage of around 75 years. This is the 75th year because it came out in Shankari Prasad case, it came out in 1951. So let's see what is the relevance and what was the sequence of cases that came out and it led to the culmination in the form of Keshwananda Bharti case. So this case actually came when the government of India back then or the parliament introduced first amendment to the constitution by which it sought to put a restriction or put a protection to certain laws. What were those laws? There was zamindari, there were laws to abolish the zamindari system. Now all of these laws were put under a certain procedure and a certain table and which was put under protection by the First Amendment Act. And this, when Shankari Prasad case himself a zamindar, he approached the court and said that parliament cannot take fundamental rights. What was the fundamental right here? It was a fundamental right to property, which was a fundamental right back then in 1951. So he approached the court and he said that parliament do not have the authority to jump on fundamental rights simply by amending the constitution. However, in result, in that year, he lost the case and it, in a way, it set off the long journey towards the Keshwananda Bharti case, of course, which had its implications in the form of arrival of basic structure doctrine, apart from putting a limitation and putting a healthy limitation on parliaments or any authority's power. So let's see how did it proceed from this case towards the Keshwananda Bharti case. And so let's see this as if we have to see the relevance today. This highlights that any institution, whatever that institution be, it could be parliament, it could be any state legislature or the judiciary itself. If it has unbridled powers, means the powers with no limitation, then it can meddle with the basic core and the fundamental rights that any human beings and the people of India have. The rulings, this ruling's legacy was that in 1974, this case came out, Keshwananda Bharti case, and it established the basic structure doctrine and it ensured that certain core features of constitution could not be meddled with despite parliament wanting to amend the constitution. So this happened, but we will see how this proceeded towards this case in 1974. First of all, in 1951, we saw the Shankari Prasad case. Then in 1967 came the Golaknath versus State of Punjab. This was again important. This overruled the Shankari Prasad and Sajjan Singh cases, which was another case which upheld the same result as was upheld in Shankari Prasad. But in Golaknath case in 1967, the judgments that came out of these cases were overruled. And it was held that fundamental rights cannot be amended at all under Article 368, which tells the procedure to amend the constitution. And these rights are transcendental, it remains there irrespective of the time, stage and era, and they form the core of the constitution. So they cannot be amended with no restrictions. So parliament in effect lost power to even touch any of these fundamental rights. Now that come the next important case, which was a landmark judgment known by the name of Keshwananda Bharti case in 1973. This actually overruled Golaknath case and gave the structure and the doctrine of basic structure, which ensured certain principles like rule of law, parliamentary democracy, socialist structure, sovereignty, the importance of preamble, the balance between fundamental rights and directive principle. All of these features were ensured that they could not be changed. And although Parliament can amend the Constitution, so in effect, yes, it can affect, but there are certain core features which could not be amended, which form the basic structure. So fundamental rights, like I said, can be amended, but not in a way that disturbs the core element of basic structure or core features of our Constitution. So this was regarding this case. Now the next article, which talks about the Shakti semiconductor chip. IIT Madras is the institution that is behind the design and development of these chips, semiconductor chips. Let's read more about this. So IIT Madras and ISRO have developed this indigenous chip. The most important part is this is indigenous. Why these chips are very crucial for the development of critical sectors like semiconductor, space development, defense developments. So now ISRO has come forward along with IIT Madras. It has developed this chip, semiconductor chip. What are these chips? These are basically processor. These provide the processor architecture. Now, what do I mean by that? It refers to the design and fundamental operational structure. Any computer needs this structure. Why? Because human is bound to, or any person is bound to give certain instructions to the computer. But how does that computer interpret those instructions? Because that computer is not a human. So he needs certain language, certain core instructions, and that are designed in this chip. This is the basic chip and the brain of a computer that acts transacting the business between the human and the machine. So we need these chips. It is also responsible for acting as a processor architecture. The one critical feature about it is that generally these chips are not open source. However, if any open source advantage, if these chips are developed on the platform which has an open source, which is the case with Shakti semiconductor chip also, then there is no licensing fees. Now this is not the case with chips developed by or presently working like ARM or Intel. You must have heard about Intel chips, but you do require a license to give it to companies or to charge companies so that they can use this architecture. Fine. Then it enables, if let's say it remains open source, then the license fees is not there. It enables the startups, academia and industries to use this kind of architecture and develop further applications. Now coming back to the reading of this article, Shakti is backed by the MeitY, this Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, under Digital India RISCV initiative. What is this initiative? This initiative is actually launched by Ministry of Electronics and IT and the purpose was to develop these particular chips which were required to be used by space, and it would position India as a global hub of this kind of chip designs. It is of course open source, that is the particular provision of these chips. You do not require a license to use them, and it is led by IIT Madras. And of course, CDEC also participates. There are other key projects also this under Digital India initiative to develop chips. First is Shakti processor, again developed by IIT Madras, and Vega processor, which is developed by CDEC. It also helping in Atmanirbhar Bharat in semiconductor sectors. So coming and reading more ahead on this, to promote this would lead to indigenous development of microprocessor based products. Like just now I told you what is this processor, what it leads to, why it is important. It offers, in this particular case, Shakti chip, semiconductor chip, it ensures best in class security, and it has a features of visibility for users who adopts this technology. So this technology uses these kind of particular chips which are essential to work on further applications. Alright, then development is part of the efforts to indigenize semiconductors used by the ISRO for various applications and ensure self-reliance. So any processor architecture which this chip has, the essential purpose of this chip, it ensures how a processor is built, how it handles instructions, the commands given by the user, and how it interacts with the components of a computer, so that enables a computer to give a particular solution and a response. Then we have read about this. I have also told you that it is based out of open source advantage that these chips have, unlike Intel chips. Now this article, another article in the simplified section, which is about Sukhoi 57 fighter jet, and India is going to cooperate with Russia. In fact, Russia has offered to partner with India for joint production of this jet, fighter jet. Let's read more about this. Russia's state-owned defense exports company, which is Rosoboron Export. All right, this has been a participant in the ongoing aerospace summit that is taking place in Bangalore. It is currently ongoing. There it has offered, this company of Russia's backed company, it has offered India with the joint production of Sukhoi 57, which is Russia's 5th generation fighter aircraft. You can remember it is a fighter aircraft. There could be question, what is Sukhoi 57 aircraft? Or they can just ask you with the name, what is this? You can just say this is a fighter aircraft. Remember that this has been in the arsenal of Russia. Of course, this production would take place at the HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, and it could start as early as 2025. Additionally, this Rosoboron Export will also offer additional technologies which is required. So production is not enough. We need state-of-the-art technologies which are required to operate these kind of fighter jets. So they have promised that they will also ensure these kind of technologies such as active electronically scanned array, radars, optics, AI elements, software communication, because those are crucial, not just the hardware but software part as well. And it has said that it will boost the advanced medium combat aircraft program of India. Okay. India is already trying to develop this. If let's see we get the cooperation of Russian Rosoboron export company, then we'll be able to develop and come up with these technologies efficiently. And they also said that there is no threat of sanctions as such, that they'll keep on supplying and availing these kind of technologies for next 60 years for this successful cooperation. So India do not have to worry about the consistent supply or sanctions on the probably delivery of these technologies and these aircrafts to India. Now, something about or important facts about Aero Summit 2025, which is currently going on in Bangalore. It is the 5th edition, 2025. It is the 5th edition, 15th edition. First edition was in 1996, and it will of course continue for 5 days from 10th February to 14th. It is taking place in Bangalore Air Force Station. Organizers are Ministry of Defense, and theme is Runway to a Billion Opportunities. All right. Now, this was all for today. I hope you liked this session. All the best and thank you.